This is one that should have been barricaded off completely. You've got a road closed sign out there and the do not enter. Not good. Looks like the BMPs are in place, which is good for the drain, but somebody was on the inside and the tracks are coming out. So nobody went from the outside in. They were on the inside of the project and came to the outside. You can tell by the track. So this is another one contractor's going to have to fix and make sure it hits the punch list. So striping. This is also part of the project and inspector's responsibilities. So read the specifications for proper striping. And some people are thinking, well, striping is striping. It's usually thermo or it's paint. Well, what is it? Is it thermo? Is it paint? Is it tape? Is it sprayed on thermo or extruded thermo? Which one is it? What about temp striping? Are you required to put temp striping down in between before you put the permanent striping down? So things you need to know and be aware of to get a handle on before that, and talk to the contractor before they even do anything. We had one project I'll show a little bit later where they put down spray on when it's supposed to be extruded thermo. So that's actually this picture right here. What was listed in the specs? Our specs on this one were kind of vague. We just said thermo. We didn't say extruded or spray on. And by the time we caught them, I take that back. Ours did say extruded thermoplastic, but the contractor had done a Caltrans job earlier, and they did the spray on thinking that would be okay. And you can see the stripes in here. It's a little bit thinner of an application, but it's thin on the edges on both these pictures. And that's not what we spec'd out. So I noticed this on my way to work in the morning. It's like, that stripe doesn't look right. And sure enough, it was sprayed on. So, so how do you mitigate that? If they put it down a little bit thinner, now you've got to come back and work with the contractor to mitigate that, because they didn't put down what we wanted. They knew it. And we got less of a product on the ground, because the spray on goes down thinner than extruded. So it's not going to last as long. So what we did is we just deducted some money for it. We didn't want them to grind this out and put it back, or even to go over it with another layer, because that would have been too thick and a little bit too costly at the time. So we left it down and just took a deduction on the overall project, or the payments, I should say. So this picture is just to show how close you can get to the medians. Some of the striping contractors have a hard time getting that close. We need to get close as we can to the median. Pay attention to that and make sure everybody understands how close you want it. That's where it was when they took it off doing the project. That's where it needs to go when it goes back. Another thing to look for as well is all the reflectors are in place as well. Not just the striping's down, but you've got reflectors on this and the buttons that go with it. So just another example of what the finished product should look like, and the inspector should know. So here's some temporary striping that happened on that same project. So what is the specifications for removing or covering up your temporary striping? You can see the striping in between. Do you need to move it? So what happened was, this was a night project and we needed to get some temporary striping down. So the contractor, instead of calling back his striping contractor, the paving contractor themselves went out and put down some striping themselves. Well, they didn't put it in the right spot, obviously, because the permanent striping is laid out a little bit differently. So now we have this paint marks from just a regular spray rattle can of paint that they put down that you need to cover up, and that's up to the contractor to do it. So we could have had them grind it out, but then what you're doing is you're ruining that nice microsurface mat, and you don't want to do that. Otherwise, they have to come back and re-slurry, and they don't want to do that. So in our specs, we just cover for we count for a parking lot seal to come out, cover that up with thick a coat as you can, and then put your permanent striping next to it. My lights went out again in my office. Sorry about that. So that's just one of the fixes, but this is what you end up with, and they need to cover all this up so it doesn't look so bad. Utilities. You need to talk about all utilities: drainage, water, monuments, sewer, whatever is out there in the street. Are all the utilities marked and accounted for? Have you looked at the plans to make sure they were, as a contractor done that? Do they need to be raised or lower? When the inspector is going around looking at all the streets, and you notice some of these that are too low, you need to make note of that right away and make sure everybody knows that some of these utilities need to be raised, and bring that up so they can start doing it. Survey monuments. Federal projects require all monuments to be surveyed and documented, and that's kind of what we're running into now. If we get any federal money, we have to go out there, and we've been hiring a separate contractor to come out and or an inspection company to come out and inspect for them all, find them all, make sure they're all there, And if we don't see them, we need to make sure we get them added and raise them up to where they're the top so we can see them there. Just be prepared for that. That takes time, it takes money, and we usually do that a year or two ahead of time before the project even goes out. The picture on the far right is a manhole that'll be buried because we didn't find it. The inspector didn't see it, contractor didn't see it, or maybe they did, they just paved over it. This was an overlay project. And now the manhole's starting to come through. This is probably about 10 to 13 years later. And now you can see the outline of the manhole coming through, and it's starting to crack. It's just one got missed and should have been picked up. Oops. So pay attention to detail. There's a lot of details in this project. Check your plans, your specifications, your spread rates. Check your mix designs. Make sure everything is getting tested. Calibration of trucks. When a truck comes on, the calibration of trucks, let me start from the beginning, that the trucks need to be calibrated before they come out. So a few days before the job is going to start, the contractor will bring a truck out, you do the calibration, and that's the same truck that will be out there when they start the job, and it won't be on another job in between that. So make sure you're using the same truck that you calibrated. If that truck goes down in between then, and you're right in the middle of the job, you need to calibrate the next truck. So many times the contractors will bring out two trucks, they calibrate them both. If one goes down, they use the other one. So that way, you know it's calibrated for our job. Test as often as possible. Make sure the products are in compliance before they're applied. Test material before, test it during. Take samples all the time. And we have a separate company that comes in and does that and tests our materials. And the lab will take this. And if we're doing it during the job, at least we have now some samples. So if the project fails 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, we can go back and look at those samples to see what the materials were made of, and we know what went wrong and how to fix it. So type 1, 2, or 3 rock, whatever you're using, was it crushed within the last 30 days? Did the rock get a chance to sit for at least 30 days and neutralize the charges? We had a huge problem on one of our jobs where the supplier gave the contractor some rock. They started mixing it. Nothing would blend together because the rock had a charge to it. It wouldn't take the oil or the water. Soon it hits the ground, the crew tried to work with it. Everything would separate and nothing was working. We ended up shutting down the job for a couple of days till they figured it out. But that is in the specifications to make sure that rock has been neutralized for at least 30 days. So something needs to be done in your pre-con meeting. Talk about it early. Make sure there's plenty of material on hand for the whole job. So attention to detail. Follow the specs. Sweeping, rolling, spread rates, just to name a few. Stay on schedule. If not, repost, re-notify the residents of what's going on. Create your punch list. Start your punch list from the first day. Talk to your contractor about it all the time. Let everybody know, and the engineer, and let them know what's going on the whole time. You have to inspect what you expect. Good inspection will have the expectations will be met, and it should turn out to be a successful project. Open lines of communication between the inspector, contractor, and engineer, like I've been talking about. Don't be an absent inspector. Show up every day. Show up on time. If you come to work every day at the same time, get your notes together, get in your truck, get out in the field, and be there on time when the contractor's firing up. Be there early before the contractor fires up. A lot of times the contractors like to fire up the equipment before they're allowed to do it. Ours is 7 a.m. and sometimes they'll get there at 6. That's okay sometimes, but a lot of times it's not, because you're going to get the loud, noisy equipment, and now you're going to have neighbors complaining. So get there early and start talking to the contractor when they get there first thing in the morning. Get help if needed. Add additional inspector if job is large and spread out. Some of our jobs do get large around 2 sides of town, or it's just a large residential slurry project to where you're trying to count the trucks, you're trying to take care of quantities and watch the mat go down or the material go down. Get an extra inspector out there. Have them help out for a few days while you need it, and then let them go back to whatever else they were doing. But communicate that. Say, hey, I can't keep up with this. Get a little bit too big right now. Get an additional inspector. So what we've done is we've used some of our maintenance staff, and my lead workers go out and help once in a while, and gives my guys great training and helps the inspectors at the same time. Prompt response times, and inspectors the main contact with the contractor and all those, like we talked about before. So now it comes down to the punch list. You got your job mostly done. They're trying to finish up. Document, communicate. You've been doing this all along. Your inspector's been doing this. Contractors should already know about most everything on the list. Share the list with others in the project. Everybody should know what's on it. There's no reason to keep it covered. And then the contractor can start working on the list right away, like I've been talking about through the presentation. There's no reason they can have to wait till the end. If there's something they come back to and grab it, get it done, fix it, so that saves them a trip. They will appreciate it. The contractor will appreciate that, knowing what it is, so they don't have to make any special trips out later on after the project's completed. So what should a finished project look like? This is a microsurface on one of our arterial roads. Look at the overlap on the edge. It's perfect. Right along the edge, they did a fantastic job on this one. Some of our crack seals come along a little more on the edge, which we shouldn't have done, but we did, and that's fine. Striking looks great. That thermoplastic extruded, nice and straight. Thickness looks good. The markings in the middle of the road looks good. We used raised pavement markers. They're all there. Reflectors are all there. Everything is in place. Look at the mat. The mat looks like this rich mat. It's got plenty of oil in it. It's not dried out, and that's what you want to look at. So if it's getting a little bit dried out, you're going to get extra rock in the gutter, and that's something you don't want to see. And we're not seeing any shedding on this one. I know Sweeper hadn't been by before I took this picture, so this one did really well. This is one of the best looking jobs we've had here in many years. Here's a successful microsurface on the Roseville Auto Mall. It was raining that day. I didn't want to take a picture in the rain, but I needed to get the picture in there. But we did the project during the summer, and this is like a big circle is what it is. A couple straight parts in it, but it's almost a big circle. And this is a type 2 micro that we put down. So we needed to make sure that micro set up in 45 minutes to an hour because we were on a time constraint. We did the job at night because the auto mall did not want to shut down to do road improvements. They usually shut down about 11 o'clock at night. I think we got them shut down by 10. And then they had to open up again by 6. So we had about 6-8 hours to get everything done and do the whole project in one night. The contractor brought 2 trucks out. We tested the material 2 days before to make sure it was going to break in 45 minutes, which it did. So they did a fantastic job on this one. And the main thing was, you can tell from the second picture, the cars, and the speed limit's 10 or 15 around here. Cars do 30 and 40 miles an hour. And we didn't want this to start coming off, peeling off, or even shoving or shedding. So very important we got this job right. This is a Roseville Auto Mall right in the heart of Roseville, and this is probably 30 to 40% of our income for general fund. So we make sure this road is always in good condition and always in great shape for the owners of the auto mall. Successful slurry and microsurface project. The one on the left is the collector street in a residential neighborhood. The one on the right is a residential street. Both of them are microsurface, and they both turned out great. One has all the striping in place on it, even for the speed bump coming up. The RPMs are in place, and then the one on the right, you can see the edge line on the gutter lip is perfect and everything looks good. This is a few years old, and the project's doing great. So that's what the project should look like, and that's what everybody should be striving for. So let's go over a few benchmarks before we conclude the presentation. Communication. I'm not sure if I ever mentioned communication, but I'm going to mention it. Communication, clear, concise, complete, and consistent. Make sure you're doing it all the time. Make sure you're consistent, and everybody knows what's going on. Excuse me. Solve problems they arise. Do it right the first time. There's no reason to wait. Let everybody know about the problems. Get it solved. Move on. Don't come back to it. Shouldn't have to come back to it. And then document everything. Pay attention to workmanship, your joints, the handwork, application and spread rates, calibration of the trucks. Make sure all this is done up front and you're watching this all the way through the project. Handwork is very important. The joints, the overlaps. If you don't think they're doing it right, you don't need to go and tell the contractor, hey, you need to do it this way. Just say, hey, it doesn't look right. Maybe you need to change something, and they will take care of it. Rolling. There is never enough rolling. Make sure they're hitting what's in the specifications. If it calls for 6 rolls 6 times, make sure you get it. Testing of all materials. Make sure that testing is happening. Make sure it's consistent, and make sure you're getting it from the right spot. But the testing company will know. The engineering firm will know what to do and how to do it because they've done it before. So make sure it happens and make sure you document everything. Sweeping and clean up. Make sure you're getting all the sweeping that's in the contract and the cleanup, sidewalks and driveways. it's supposed to happen daily. Make sure it does happen daily and everything is clean at the end of the day so you don't get those phone calls. Because if we get the phone calls here, the inspector is going to get the call and the inspector is going to be the one driving out there at 6 o'clock at night to find out what happened, not the next day. They will be out there that night. Traffic control, make sure it's up from the beginning to the till the end. So if there's traffic control and CMS boards that need to go up 2-3 weeks in advance, make sure they stay there throughout the whole project. Notifications, make sure they're done in a timely manner and they're done correctly. Make sure what's being notified to the residents is the right message. So make sure you pay attention to all the detail on that. There's going to be mistakes, just correct them appropriately and quickly as soon as you can. Document, communicate. I know I've said it throughout the presentation. That's what needs to happen. If that happens, your project will be successful. The next project will be successful. The residents will be happy. For our case, nobody ends up at a city council meeting bitching or complaining that the project didn't go good for them. And the last thing we want is them complaining about it. So we have to answer to council what really happened out there. So make sure you document and communicate everything that's going on. The inspector, good inspector, will do that. Okay, that's about it for my presentation. Hopefully, if I was there, I'd love to take some questions from you guys and field a few questions. Usually I get a bunch of questions, but the next slide is going to have all my contact information. You guys can contact me anytime you want and just send me an email. Call me on the number there. It's the main line. You'll get through to me, leave me a voicemail, I'll get right back to you. But the best way is send me an email with any questions. You should be able to get a copy of this presentation. And if there's anything you need from it or anything you need from me, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to get that for you. So I'm going to stop sharing here. So again, my name is Jerry Dankbar, City of Roseville. We're up here in Northern California. If you have any questions, let me know. Send me an email. Otherwise, that is it. Have a good afternoon.